A Twilight Love Tales original. The moment Nadine Ashford walked into that ballroom, every lie her husband had ever told about her died on contact. The chandeliers didn't flicker. The orchestra didn't stop. But the room, every soul standing beneath those gilded ceilings, shifted. Conversations dissolved mid-sentence. Champagne glasses hovered untouched. Photographers who had been lazily circling the perimeter suddenly surged forward like wolves catching a scent they hadn't expected. She stood at the entrance in a gold dress that looked like it had been forged, not sewn. Strapless, fitted through the waist, a dramatic slit revealing one long, glistening leg that moved with the kind of grace that makes people forget how to breathe. Her locks were sculpted into a crown, honey-tipped, regal, unapologetic. Her lips, burgundy so deep it looked like a declaration, parted slightly as she exhaled into the silence she had created. And across that ballroom, frozen behind a champagne flute and the arm of another woman, stood Victor Ashford, billionaire, CEO, the man who had spent 5 years hiding Nadine from the world. His face drained of color. His jaw went slack. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, couldn't look away, because the woman commanding that room without uttering a single word was the woman he had erased. His wife, the mother of his twin daughters, the woman he told wasn't worth the public eye. But 72 hours earlier, just 3 short days before this moment, Nadine Ashford didn't even recognize her own reflection. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the one person who promised to love you loudest? Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered where you went, where the woman you used to be disappeared to? Have you ever given everything, your body, your youth, your dreams, your silence, and received nothing in return but shame? This is the story of a woman who was hidden, not because she wasn't enough, but because she was too much for a man who couldn't handle her light. What she did next didn't just change her life. It shook an entire empire to its foundation. Stay with me. Hello, my beautiful and amazing family. Welcome back to Twilight Love Tales. I am so glad you're here with me today. If you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap that like button so you never miss a story. Trust me, you're going to want to stay for this one. Now let's dive in. The house on Lakeshore Drive never felt like home. It was a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of one of Chicago's most exclusive residential towers. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble floors, a kitchen that could have graced the cover of an architecture magazine. Every surface polished, every corner immaculate, every object placed with surgical precision, not because Nadine loved order, but because disorder invited punishment. Not the kind that leaves bruises, the kind that leaves silence. And silence in that house was the loudest weapon Victor Ashford ever wielded. Nadine stood barefoot in the kitchen that morning, her fingers moving mechanically as she sliced fruit for the twins' breakfast. Each motion was measured, deliberate. There was no joy in the act, only routine. The marble beneath her feet was cold. The air carried the faint scent of cleaning solution and something else, something harder to name. Emptiness, maybe. The kind that accumulates over years until it becomes the atmosphere you breathe. Her locks were pulled back in a low bun, not styled, just managed. She wore a gray sweatshirt 2 sizes too large, one of Victor's old ones, because at some point she had stopped buying things for herself. Not because she couldn't afford it, not because she didn't want to, but because she had stopped believing she was worth the effort. From the playroom down the hall, she heard them. Zuri and Amara, her twin daughters, 6 years old, beautiful and entirely unaware that their father treated them like secrets. Zuri was the bold one, voice first into every room, questions fired like sparklers. Amara was quieter, observant, the kind of child who watched everything and understood more than she let on. Their laughter filtered through the marble walls like sunlight through cracks. It was the only warmth this house ever produced. Nadine paused mid-slice. She caught her reflection in the surface of the refrigerator door, warped, dim, barely recognizable. The glow she once carried in her 20s, gone. The confidence that used to straighten her spine when she entered a room, dismantled. Her skin still held its deep richness, her body still curved with life, but none of it mattered. Not to him. He hadn't truly looked at her in years. She finished the fruit, arranged it on 2 small plates, poured juice, set the table with precision, forks aligned, napkins folded into neat triangles. Not for presentation, for survival. Victor noticed everything. A crease, in a tablecloth, a glass with a water spot, a towel hung unevenly. These things weren't just imperfections to him, they were provocations. And Nadine had learned, slowly and painfully, that perfection was the only currency that bought peace in this house. But lately, even perfection wasn't enough. The creak of the staircase came first, then the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, descending with the rhythm of a man who believed every room he entered owed him attention. Nadine's shoulders stiffened. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She could feel the storm approaching the way animals feel earthquakes, in the bones, before the shaking begins. Nadine. His voice wasn't loud. It never was. That was the thing about Victor. He didn't need volume. He had tone, a specific register he used when he was about to dismantle something. Cool, precise, the verbal equivalent of a scalpel. She turned slowly. Yes? He descended the final steps like a prosecutor approaching the witness stand. In his hand, his phone. Screen tilted toward her, the banking app glowing. His lips were already curled with that familiar expression. Not anger. Contempt. What is this? She didn't need to look. She already knew. A donation, she said evenly, to the girls' school art program. $1,200. Each word was a separate sentence, each one loaded. You wrote a check for $1,200, without asking me. It's for our daughters, Victor. He set the phone on the counter with deliberate force, not a slam, something worse. Controlled. Everything goes through me. That's how this works. They needed supplies. The program was underfunded. I signed the check. He stepped closer, not threatening, dismissive, the way you step towards something that inconveniences you. You don't make financial decisions, Nadine. You never have. He straightened his cuff. You run the house. That's your lane. Stay in it. She held his gaze. She could feel her pulse climbing, but she kept her voice level. I'm their mother. I made a decision for their education. He scoffed, a sound she had come to recognize as the overture before cruelty. Then he looked at her, not at her face, at her body. His eyes traveled down and back up with the kind of assessment that makes a woman feel like inventory being appraised. You know what your problem is? He said. You keep acting like you're still the woman I married. He shook his head slowly. You're not. You had twins. Your body shows it. Your energy shows it. You walk around here in my old sweatshirts looking like you've given up. And honestly, maybe you have. The words landed like stones dropped into still water, each one sinking, each one sending ripples through her chest. She clenched her jaw but said nothing. That moisturizer you ordered last week, he continued, picking lint from his sleeve like the conversation bored him. $200. For what? You think a serum is going to reverse what 2 pregnancies did? Her throat tightened. I still have a body, Victor. I still deserve care. He ignored that. Completely, as if she hadn't spoken at all. The Prescott Foundation dinner is Saturday, he said, turning toward the hallway. I'm taking Petra. The name dropped into the room like a grenade with a delayed fuse. Petra Harlow. Blonde. Polished. The woman Victor had been seen with at industry events for the past 18 months, always introduced as a brand consultant, never as what she actually was. Nadine's voice came out quieter than she intended. You're taking her. Again. He stopped at the threshold, glanced over his shoulder. She photographs better. The press already knows her face. It's easier. Easier than what? And there it was. The answer that changed everything. The line that burned deeper than all the others, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest, because it revealed the architecture of everything he had built around her. Then explaining you, he said it like it was logistics, like she was a complication in his branding strategy, like the mother of his children, his black wife, his partner, the woman who had carried his legacy twice in her body, was a public relations problem. He left the room. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in front of him in over 3 years. But something cracked, not visibly, not audibly, deep inside, in the place where a woman keeps the last reserves of who she used to be. Something fractured, and through that crack, for the first time in years, light seeped in. Let me pause here and say this directly to you. He never raised his hand. Not once. But make no mistake, this was violence, the slow, eroding kind, the kind that doesn't leave bruises on skin, but scars on the soul. The kind that makes a woman forget she was ever beautiful. The kind that convinces her the world is better off without her presence. And it is the most dangerous kind, because by the time you recognize it, you've already been disappearing for years. That night, Nadine tucked the twins in. She sat between them on the floor of their bedroom, fingers weaving through Zuri's thick coils while Amara pressed her small body against Nadine's back like a vine seeking sunlight. The room smelled like strawberry shampoo and lavender lotion. Their matching plush giraffes sat on matching pillows. Everything in their world was soft, curated, safe. Everything except the truth. Mama. Amara's voice was small but precise, the kind of voice that always preceded a question too big for a 6-year-old to be asking. Yes, baby? Why doesn't Daddy take us places? Nadine's hands froze mid-braid. Her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat. Before she could answer, Zuri added, matter-of-factly, the way children deliver truths that adults spend years trying to avoid. But he takes the yellow-haired lady. The room went still. Not the artificial stillness of the penthouse. A different kind. The kind that descends when something irreversible has been spoken into existence. Nadine's fingers resumed their work, slowly, steadily, but inside, a tremor had begun that no amount of composure could contain. Because her daughters saw, they noticed. At 6 years old, they had already absorbed the hierarchy. They had already internalized the lesson their father was teaching without words, that they were meant to be hidden, that the woman with the yellow hair was worthy of daylight, and they were not. This was no longer about Nadine's pain. This was about inheritance, about what her silence was teaching her daughters to accept. She finished the braid and turned to face both girls. She held their small faces in her hands, one in each palm, and looked into their wide, trusting eyes. Listen to me, she whispered. You are the most beautiful girls in this world. You are brilliant, you are powerful, and you are never, never too much for any room you walk into. Do you hear me? They nodded. Zuri with defiance. Amara with something gentler, something that looked dangerously close to doubt. Nadine kissed their foreheads and tucked them beneath matching lavender quilts. She slipped handwritten notes into their pillowcases, small affirmations she had started writing weeks ago when the words she couldn't speak aloud needed somewhere to go. To Zuri, you are light. To Amara, you are strength. She closed their door softly and stood alone in the dark hallway. The house breathed around her, cold, indifferent, expensive. She could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of Victor's television behind his closed study door, the nothingness that had become the soundtrack of her existence. She walked to the master bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The comforter was too white, the pillows too arranged. One side of the bed was cold, had been cold for months. Victor slept in the study most nights now, or not at all. Her wedding ring glinted under the bedside lamp. She looked at it, twisted it once, a reflex she'd performed 1,000 times, the way a prisoner might rotate a shackle just to feel something. Then she stopped. No more spinning in circles. She reached for her phone in the nightstand drawer, scrolled through contacts until she found the name she needed. Monique, her oldest friend, the one who had stayed when everyone else had been pushed away, not by Nadine, but by Victor, who had slowly, systematically isolated her from every source of external strength until only the walls of this penthouse remained. She typed 3 words, I need you. The reply came in 11 seconds, named the time. I'm there. Nadine stared at the screen. Her throat burned, not with sadness, with the effort of holding back a tide that had been building for 5 years. She typed again, tomorrow, early. Bring overnight bags for the girls. Monique, no questions asked. I've got them. You focus on whatever this is. Nadine closed her eyes. Then she opened them and looked at her reflection in the dark window across the room. A ghost stared back, a woman shaped by someone else's limitations. But somewhere underneath, buried beneath the gray sweatshirts and the dimmed light and the years of silence, something stirred. Not rage. Not yet. Something quieter. Something older. Recognition. She whispered to the glass, tomorrow, I stop disappearing. Morning arrived like a door being unlocked. Nadine woke before dawn, her body humming with something unfamiliar. Not hope. Not yet. But movement. The kind that starts in the gut before it reaches the limbs. The kind that precedes every revolution. Monique arrived at 9. She stepped through the front door wearing oversized sunglasses and a camel trench coat that made her look like she was about to commit an elegant crime. She was tall, regal, and carried the kind of energy that made rooms reorganize themselves around her presence. She took one look at Nadine standing in the foyer, no makeup, locks pinned back carelessly, gray sweatshirt hanging from her frame, and her expression shifted. Not pity, recognition. "Oh, baby," Monique said softly. "We've got work to do." Nadine shook her head. "Not work. Resurrection." Monique's eyes glistened for half a second. Then they hardened with purpose. "Where are the girls?" "Playroom." "Good. I'll set them up. You, go shower. And when you come out, I want you to look at yourself, really look. Not the way he's taught you to look, the way you used to. Before him." Nadine turned and walked toward the bathroom. She closed the door, turned the handle, let the water run until steam climbed the glass like slow-growing ivy. She undressed slowly, not with shame, with attention. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked. Her body had changed. Of course it had. She had carried twins. Her hips were wider. Her stomach bore soft silver lines, the trails of creation etched into her skin. Her breasts were full, her thighs strong, her arms shaped by years of lifting children, carrying groceries, holding together a life that no one else could see. Victor had taught her to see these changes as decline, as evidence of something lost, as proof that she was no longer the woman he had chosen, and therefore no longer worthy of being chosen again. But standing here now, alone, in the steam and the silence, something shifted. She placed her hands on her stomach. Gently, the way you touch something sacred. "You were never the problem," she whispered. She stepped into the shower. The heat melted into her skin like absolution. Her hands moved over her body, not critically, not searching for imperfections, but tenderly, claiming territory, reclaiming what had been surrendered inch by inch over 5 years of erosion. She shampooed slowly, conditioned like she was oiling armor. The lather was thick and luxurious, scented with something deep, not for anyone else's pleasure, just hers. When she stepped out, she toweled herself dry in front of the mirror. No rush, no hiding. Her skin glowed under the bathroom light. Her reflection stared back, clearer now, sharper, not yet fully restored, but no longer buried. She wrapped herself in a robe and opened the bathroom door. Monique had the twins bundled and ready at the front entrance. Overnight bags packed, coats zipped, shoes on. "Auntie Monique's rules today," Monique announced, "which means ice cream before lunch and organized chaos after." Zuri grinned wide. Amara clapped. Nadine crouched down and pulled them both against her. They smelled like strawberry shampoo and innocence and everything worth fighting for. "Mama's going to do something important today," she said. "When I come back, I'll be a little different." Amara tilted her head. "Different how?" Nadine smiled. "Brighter." Monique caught her eye over the girls' heads and nodded once, the kind of nod between women that carries entire conversations without a single word. Then she loaded the girls into her car. At the door, she turned back. "Whatever you're planning," she said, voice low, "make it unforgettable." Nadine held her gaze. "I intend to." The car pulled away. The door closed. And for the first time in 5 years, the silence in that house didn't suffocate. It opened. Chicago unfolded beneath the cab window like a city remembering her name. Nadine directed the driver south, away from Victor's territory, where glass towers bore his logo, and every doorman knew his preference for silence. She went to neighborhoods where women wore their boldness out loud, and no one asked permission to be seen. Her first stop was a boutique called Reverie, tucked between a jazz bar and a West African restaurant on a street that smelled like shea butter and ambition. The storefront was narrow, the lighting warm, the racks sparse, each piece chosen, not stocked. The owner stood behind the counter, a tall woman with cropped silver hair, rings on every finger, and the posture of someone who had long ago decided she would never make herself small for anyone's comfort. She looked up when Nadine entered. "What are we looking for?" "Something that doesn't apologize," Nadine said. The woman studied her for a long moment, not assessing, reading. Then she smiled. "Follow me." They moved past safe fabrics and predictable silhouettes into a back room lined with garments that didn't just hang, they commanded. Nadine's fingers brushed across emerald silk, onyx velvet, structured crepe that felt like ambition woven into thread. And then she found it. A dress the color of molten gold, strapless, fitted through the waist, a dramatic slit that would reveal one leg from mid-thigh down, and a train that whispered when it moved. It didn't shine the way cheap things shine. It glowed like something alive. Nadine held it against her body, turned to the mirror. Her breath didn't catch. It deepened. "That dress has been waiting for someone," the owner said quietly. "I think it just found her." Nadine didn't ask the price. She placed it on the counter and pulled out the card, the sleek black credit card. Victor had given her 2 Christmases ago with a dismissive wave. For emergencies, this qualified. She moved through the afternoon like a woman assembling armor piece by piece. Each purchase was deliberate. Each decision was a declaration. Heels came next. A boutique on Michigan Avenue with mirrored walls and lighting that made everything look like a weapon dressed as an accessory. She walked past rows of loafers and flats until she found what she needed. Stilettos, black patent leather, 4 inches, gold soles that flashed with every step like a warning. "Would you like to try those on?" the attendant asked. "I'd like to try on 5 pairs, Nadine said. "No wedges, nothing safe." The attendant blinked, then smiled. Right away, Nadine tried each pair with the focused attention of a woman selecting instruments. The gold-soled stilettos made her taller. The crimson heels sharpened her legs into a statement. A matte black pair with an angular heel made the floor itself seem to straighten beneath her. She chose them all. From there, lingerie. She entered a boutique where the lighting was amber and the fabrics felt like secrets. The attendant approached with professional warmth. "Something for someone special?" Nadine met her eyes. "Yes, me." She selected a deep bronze set, delicate, daring, luxurious against her dark skin. Then a second in midnight black, barely there lace that made her feel powerful just holding it. She didn't flinch at the prices. She swiped Victor's card again. Sweet, deliberate justice in one smooth motion. The cashier tried to maintain composure, but Nadine caught the flicker in her eyes when the name on the card appeared on the screen. Nadine leaned forward slightly. "He'll notice me when I walk into the room," she said quietly. "Not when the bill hits." The cashier pressed her lips together to suppress a grin. "Yes, ma'am." Her final stop before the salon was a fragrance house near the river. Warm inside, rich, the kind of place that understood scent as identity. She sat at the private blending counter opposite a perfumer with steady hands and an attentive gaze. "Signature scent?" he asked. "No," Nadine said. "A scent that makes people remember me long after I leave a room." He studied her for a moment. Then he began. Oud, black orchid, warm, amber, a finish of bergamot. He pressed a test strip to her wrist. She inhaled. It smelled like power, like seduction laced with intention, like a woman who had been asleep for 5 years and had just opened her eyes. "I'll take it," she said, "and I want it engraved." He asked for the name. She paused, then reclaimed. "Now, if you're still here with me, and I know you are because this story is just getting started, go ahead and drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had a moment where you decided enough was enough? I want to hear your story. And while you're at it, hit that like button. It helps more people find this video. Now, let's keep going, because what happens next? You are not ready. The salon was the final altar. It occupied a corner space on a tree-lined block, the kind of salon where women didn't come for trims. They came for transformations. The interior was all exposed brick, warm lighting, and the scent of Moroccan oil. Nadine walked in without an appointment. The receptionist looked up, assessed the situation in one glance, and disappeared into the back. Moments later, a woman emerged, tall, precise, with close-cropped natural hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen every version of every woman who'd ever sat in her chair. Her name tag read Yvette. She studied Nadine the way a sculptor studies marble, not for what it is, but for what's inside. "What are we doing today?" Yvette asked. Nadine sat in the chair and met her own eyes in the mirror. "I've been invisible for 5 years. I want you to make me impossible to ignore." Yvette didn't flinch. She nodded, slowly, knowingly, and reached for the clips holding Nadine's locks in place. She let them down one by one, running her fingers through the length, assessing weight and texture and possibility. "You're sure about this?" Yvette asked. "Not doubt, respect." "I was sure yesterday," Nadine said. "Today I'm certain." The scissors came first. Long sections fell to the floor like relics from a past life. With each cut, Nadine felt lighter, not just physically, but structurally. The weight of trying to be what Victor wanted, the pressure to maintain a version of herself that served someone else's comfort. It slipped to the floor with every strand, and she didn't mourn a single piece. Yvette worked with the precision of an architect. She reshaped Nadine's locks into something shorter, sculpted, deliberate, a crown-like formation that framed her face with sharp geometry, high and structured at the top, tapered at the sides, each lock twisted with intention. Color? Yvette asked. Honey at the tips, just enough to catch light. The dye went in warm. As it set, Nadine sat in silence, watching her reflection sharpen in real time. The woman in the mirror was no longer the ghost she'd seen that morning. She was becoming someone else. No, she was becoming herself. 20 minutes later, Yvette rinsed, dried, and styled. She spun the chair for the final reveal. Nadine stared. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She nodded, slowly, firmly, the way you greet someone you've been expecting for a very long time. "There you are," she whispered. Yvette smiled behind her, arms folded, satisfied. "Whoever made you disappear is about to have a very bad night." Nadine stood. The mirror caught her from every angle. The honey tips shimmered. The structure of the cut made her cheekbones look carved from stone. Her eyes, dark, deep, unlocked, held a fire she hadn't seen in years. She paid at the front desk, the same card, the one with his name on it. And as she stepped outside, the wind lifted the collar of her blouse, and the city, for the first time, didn't tower over her. It watched her. The suite at the Langham became her sanctuary. Monique had insisted she take the weekend. "Go find yourself," she'd said. "And if you can't find her, build her." Nadine laid everything out on the bed like an altar. The gold dress, still sealed in its silk garment bag. The heels, 5 pairs, each one an act of defiance. The bronze lingerie, the custom perfume, her name etched into the glass. She stood before the display and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Ownership. She moved to the mirror. Slowly, deliberately. She unzipped her dress and let it fall. Stepped out of her shoes. Unclasped her bra. Until she stood in nothing but her own skin beneath the amber glow of the city outside the window. Her body was not what it had been at 23. It was better. It had been tested. It had housed 2 lives. It had endured silence and shame and indifference and still refused to collapse. Her stretch marks glinted like silver thread. Her hips were wide. Her thighs were strong. Her stomach bore the soft terrain of motherhood. She placed both palms flat against her belly and whispered, "You carried miracles. Don't you dare apologize for the evidence." She closed her eyes. Her hands moved, slowly, gently, over her own skin, not with the urgency of desire, with the tenderness of reunion. She touched her arms, her ribs, her collarbone. She cupped her own face. She held herself the way she hadn't been held in years. Not by someone else, by herself. It wasn't performance. It wasn't seduction for an audience. It was reclamation, the act of reminding her body that it still belonged to her, that it was worthy of softness, of attention, of care, that the woman living inside this skin had never stopped being beautiful. She had just stopped being told. She slid into the bronze lingerie, not for any man's eyes, but for the mirror's. She stood tall, turned once, caught the light on her collarbone. The gold chain necklace she'd bought earlier rested against her chest like a whisper. She walked barefoot across the suite. The city shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She pressed one hand against the cool glass and looked out at the skyline, steel and glass and ambition stretching in every direction. For 5 years, she had watched this city from behind curtains, believing she didn't belong to it. Tonight, it unfolded before her like an invitation. "I don't owe anyone softness," she whispered to her reflection in the window, "if they can't handle my strength." Her phone buzzed. A photo from Monique. Zuri and Amara asleep in a blanket fort, faces peaceful, tiny hands intertwined. Nadine pressed the phone to her chest and felt her eyes burn. She wasn't just doing this for herself. She was doing it so that one day, when someone tried to make her daughters invisible, they would remember their mother, standing in gold, standing in fire, and they would refuse to disappear. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened her phone's notes app. A list began to take shape. Find a lawyer, secure personal bank account, transfer savings, choose the moment. The reckoning would not be loud. It would not be chaotic. It would be precise, composed, and devastating, dressed in gold, scented with oud, and timed to perfection. The gala was 2 days away, and for the first time in 5 years, she was going. The Prescott Foundation dinner was the kind of event where power wore black tie and pretended to care about philanthropy. Crystal chandeliers descended from vaulted ceilings like frozen fireworks. A live orchestra filled the ballroom with velvet sound. The floor gleamed, polished to the point of vanity, and photographers lined the entrance, snapping at every arriving figure like trained predators scenting relevance. Victor Ashford arrived at 7:45, sharp, deliberate, his tuxedo cut with the precision of a man who understood that image was currency and he intended to be rich in it. Petra Harlow clung to his arm. She wore a pale pink gown, sequined, low-cut, designed for maximum visibility and minimum depth. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an elaborate updo. Her smile was calibrated, not warm, just photogenic. She scanned for cameras before she scanned for people. She looked expensive and decorative, which as far as Victor was concerned, was exactly the point. He guided her through the entrance with practiced ease. Handshakes exchanged, smiles deployed. Every interaction managed like a transaction. The press ate it up. "Mr. Ashford, over here. Victor, is this your partner? One more, Mr. Ashford." Inside, the ballroom was already in motion. Champagne circulated. Conversations bloomed in clusters. Power orbited power, and everyone knew the gravitational center tonight was the head table, where Reginald Drake, chairman of Ashford Global's board and honorary host of the evening, held court. Drake was old money wrapped in old wisdom. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that didn't need volume. He watched Victor's entrance from across the room with the expression of a man who missed nothing and forgave less. Victor approached with his boardroom smile. "Reginald, good to see you." Drake shook his hand. His eyes drifted to Petra, who was already adjusting her hair in the reflection of a passing champagne tray. "And your wife?" Drake asked, his tone light but deliberate. "Will we see Nadine tonight?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Victor's jaw tightened, a micro-movement most wouldn't notice, but Drake did. "She prefers to stay home. The girls keep her busy." Drake nodded slowly. His eyes lingered a beat too long. "Shame. She always had a presence about her. People still ask about her, you know." Victor said nothing. He didn't need to, because the answer wasn't for Drake. It was for himself, a reminder that the woman he'd buried was still alive in people's memories, even if he'd tried to erase her from his own. Petra leaned into his ear. "Why does everyone keep asking about your wife?" "They don't," Victor said flatly. "Drink your champagne." She pouted but obeyed, and for the next 20 minutes, the gala proceeded exactly as Victor had planned. Controlled, curated, his world, his stage, his narrative. And then, at exactly 8:14, the room shifted. It didn't happen all at once. First, it was the photographers, a sudden burst of flashes at the entrance, more urgent than before, more concentrated, the kind of intensity reserved for someone unexpected. Then the murmurs, rolling through the crowd like distant thunder, soft at first, then sharper, intentional. Heads turned, one by one, then in clusters, then all at once, like dominoes falling toward the door. And there she stood, Nadine Ashford, at the entrance of the ballroom, in a gold dress that looked like it had been forged by gods who were tired of watching good women disappear. The strapless neckline framed her collarbone like architecture. The fabric clung to her waist, not desperately, reverently, before falling into a dramatic slit that revealed one long, glistening leg that moved with the kind of grace that makes people forget their own names. Her locks were sculpted into a crown, honey-tipped and regal, catching the light of every chandelier in the room. Her lips, burgundy, deep, absolute, parted slightly as she exhaled into the silence she had created. She wore a gold chain at her throat. A scent, warm, rich, unforgettable, trailed behind her like a signature written in smoke. She didn't scan for Victor. She didn't search for validation. She didn't adjust her dress or check her hair, or seek a familiar face for reassurance. She simply walked. Every step was measured, not hesitant, not rushed, claimed. Each click of her heel against marble was a sentence she'd been composing for 5 years. The crowd parted for her, not out of courtesy, but instinct. Something about her energy rearranged the room's gravity. Whispers erupted. Is that... That's Victor's wife. I thought Where has she been? She looks like... Oh my God. Victor didn't move, didn't speak. His champagne glass hovered, frozen, halfway to his lips. His face drained of composure. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, went wide with something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Beside him, Petra stiffened. Who the hell is that? He didn't answer. He couldn't, because the woman commanding the entire ballroom, without uttering a single word, was the woman he'd hidden for 5 years. His wife, the mother of his daughters. The woman he'd told wasn't worth the public eye. And she was incandescent. Now listen, if this story is hitting you the way I think it is, go ahead and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been made to feel invisible. Someone who's forgotten how powerful they are. Share it because stories like this remind us that we are never too far gone. And make sure you're subscribed because this story isn't over yet. Nadine crossed the ballroom floor and arrived at Reginald Drake's table. The chairman did something he hadn't done for anyone else that evening. He stood, not politely, not casually. He rose to his full height, eyes wide with genuine admiration, and extended both hands. Nadine Ashford, he said, voice rich with disbelief. I was beginning to think they'd locked you in a tower. She placed her hand in his with effortless grace. Not a tower, Reginald, just a very quiet house. The table, 6 of the most powerful executives in Chicago, went silent. Every eye on her, every ear tuned to her frequency. You look... Drake shook his head. You look extraordinary. Nadine smiled. Not wide, not performative, just enough to change the temperature of the room. You're kind. Victor didn't mention you'd be attending. She held his gaze. I didn't come for Victor. The words landed like a verdict. Across the table, board members exchanged glances. Wives leaned in. The air itself seemed to tighten. Nadine accepted a flute of champagne from a passing server with the ease of a woman who had always belonged in this room, who had simply been kept from it. She sat at Drake's left and turned her attention to the executives around her as if she'd been part of this world all along, because she had. She'd just been made to forget it. The conversations that followed were nothing short of remarkable. Nadine spoke about philanthropic models, educational equity, the gap between corporate donations and community impact. Every answer was informed, every observation sharp. She wasn't reciting talking points. She was thinking in real time, and it showed. People didn't just listen to her. They leaned in. One partner's wife approached, curiosity barely disguised. I don't mean to pry, but are you really Victor's wife? Nadine turned to her. Her expression was calm, but the weight behind her eyes was unmistakable. Still, legally, she paused, but not for much longer. The woman blinked. I always wondered why we never saw you. I assumed. You assumed I didn't fit the profile, Nadine finished. No malice, no venom, just clarity. The woman flushed. That's not what I... But it's what you thought. The woman stammered, then retreated. Nadine didn't watch her go. She didn't need to. The point had landed. Drake leaned closer. That was elegant. Nadine sipped her champagne. I've had practice. Victor appeared within minutes. He moved toward her like a man caught in a current he didn't understand, not walking so much as being pulled. His jaw was set. His eyes flickered between fury and something worse, uncertainty. Nadine, she turned her head slowly, the way you acknowledge a ripple in an otherwise still lake. Victor. His voice dropped. What are you doing here? I was invited. By whom? By myself. He stepped closer, his composure cracking like plaster over old brick. This isn't your event. This isn't your world. Nadine set down her glass. Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching, burning with a fire he had never once prepared for. Everything you built, Victor, every dollar, every deal, every headline, was built on the foundation of a home I held together, the children I raised alone, the silence I kept to protect your image. Her voice was low, steady, devastating. This isn't your event either, it's ours, and I am done, completely done, being the invisible half. The words landed in the space between them, like a gavel. Surrounding tables had gone quiet. Conversations stalled. Even the orchestra seemed to dim. Victor reached for her wrist, not hard, just reflexive. the instinct of a man accustomed to controlling every variable in his orbit. Nadine looked down at his hand, then up at his face. "Remove your hand," she said, quietly, lethally, "or I will remove your reputation." He released her, stepped back. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in their marriage, in their entire lives together, Victor Ashford had no power in the room. Nadine turned back to the table, lifted her glass, and raised it toward Drake. 2 reappearances. Drake clinked her flute, his eyes bright with admiration. 2 reclamations. Across the room, Petra stood alone near the buffet. Her arms were folded. Her sequin dress caught the light, but it didn't matter. She looked polished, yes. But next to the woman now commanding the evening, she looked like a rough draft beside a masterpiece. And she knew it. For the first time, the discomfort on Petra's face wasn't jealousy. It was recognition, the slow, sickening realization that she too had been a prop. Just a different kind, lighter-skinned, more palatable, easier to photograph, but ultimately, just another woman Victor used to fill a frame. Victor drifted through the rest of the evening like a man whose compass had been demagnetized. He spoke to no one of consequence. He held no court. The gravity that once pulled people toward him had shifted, and it now belonged entirely to the woman in gold. The terrace was quiet. The city stretched below in every direction, steel and glass and ambition, sparkling like a promise or a dare. The wind was cool but not cold, carrying the faint scent of the lake. Nadine stepped outside alone. The gold dress caught the breeze, the slit rising slightly. She didn't shiver. She didn't fidget. She placed both hands on the railing and looked out at the skyline she had watched for 5 years from behind curtains. Tonight, it didn't tower over her. It opened. A door clicked behind her. She turned. It wasn't Victor. Reginald Drake stepped onto the terrace, hands in his pockets, expression unguarded in a way she hadn't seen from him all evening. He walked to the railing and stood beside her. Not too close, not too far. The distance of respect. "You left everyone inside starstruck," he said. She arched a brow. "You say that like it's a problem." "It's not." He paused. "It's magnificent." They stood in silence for a moment. The orchestra hummed faintly behind them. The city pulsed below. "What do you want, Reginald?" Nadine asked. He took a breath, then answered honestly. "I want to tell you that you reminded everyone tonight what power looks like when it's quiet, refined, earned." He turned to face her. "And frankly, I'm glad you're no longer hidden." "I was never hiding," she said. "I was put away, but not anymore." "No," she said, "not anymore." He reached into his breast pocket and produced a card. White stock, embossed lettering, understated and deliberate, like everything Drake did. "The board has been looking for a new director of philanthropic strategy," he said. "Someone with intelligence, presence, integrity. Someone who understands what it means to build something real." He extended the card. "I think you're that person." Nadine looked at the card, then at him. "This isn't charity?" she asked. Not defensive, clarifying. "This is opportunity," he said. "Earned. Not given." She took the card. Her fingers didn't tremble. "I'll call Monday," she said. Drake nodded, smiled faintly. "You changed the story tonight, Nadine." She looked out at the skyline. The wind lifted the honey tips of her crown. "I didn't rewrite it," she said. "I just stopped letting someone else hold the pen." They stood together in silence, not as conspirators, not as anything romantic, but as 2 people who understood that some moments are too important for noise. Then Drake said quietly, "I've been around a long time. I've seen many people rise and fade. But you burned through that room." Nadine turned her head. A soft warning flickered in her eyes. "Careful. Flattery invites expectation." "I'm not flattering," he said. "I'm observing." She held his gaze for a beat, then nodded, accepted it. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She opened it. A photo from Monique, Zuri and Amara, asleep in a blanket fort, tiny hands intertwined, faces soft with peace. Nadine pressed the phone against her chest, closed her eyes. Let the wind hold her. These 2 girls would never learn to shrink. They would never wonder if they were too dark, too wide, too present, too real. They would grow up watching their mother command rooms, sign contracts, wear gold, speak truth. And when someone, anyone, tried to make them invisible, they would remember this. Their mother had fire, and it never dimmed. The morning after the gala, Nadine didn't return to the penthouse. She went to Monique's apartment, where the twins were already awake, eating cereal in mismatched pajamas and arguing about which cartoon character was braver. When Nadine walked through the door, both girls looked up. Their eyes widened, not at the dress, not at the hair, not at the heels, at the way she stood. "Mama," Amara whispered, "you look like a queen." Nadine crouched, pulled them both into her arms, pressed her lips against their foreheads and breathed them in. Strawberry shampoo, cereal milk, innocence. "So do you," she said. "Both of you, always." Within the week, she retained a family attorney, one of the best in the city. She moved strategically, the way Victor had taught her to move, except now the strategy served her. She secured financial records, documented the years of emotional isolation, filed for protective custody of the twins, opened her own bank account, the first one in her name alone in over 6 years. She didn't announce any of it. She didn't call Victor. She simply moved. Quietly, precisely, irreversibly. The gala photos, meanwhile, had taken on a life of their own. Someone had captured her entrance, the gold dress, the crown, the burgundy lips, the stillness in her eyes, and it had gone viral, not as gossip but as a symbol. Headlines bloomed across business magazines and social media. The wife Victor Ashford hid. Who is Nadine Ashford? The most powerful entrance of the year. The board noticed. Shareholders noticed. Sponsors noticed. Victor's carefully curated image, the polished CEO, the visionary, the man behind Bold is the brand, began to crack. Not because Nadine attacked it, because the truth did. Petra was the next domino to fall. Within days of the gala, she stopped answering Victor's calls. Not out of loyalty to Nadine, out of self-preservation. She had seen the shift. She had watched the room reorganize itself around a woman in gold, while she stood by the buffet in pink sequins, holding a champagne glass no one offered to refill. And she had understood, perhaps for the first time, that she was never Victor's partner. She was his distraction. And distractions, by definition, are temporary. Victor called Nadine exactly once, not to apologize, not to ask about the twins, to demand damage control. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. On Monday, exactly as promised, she called Reginald Drake. By Friday, she had accepted the position as Director of Philanthropic Strategy at the Ashford Global Foundation. The irony wasn't lost on her. She would now sit at the table of the company her husband built, not beside him, but above his shadow. Her first board meeting was the following Tuesday. She wore a tailored navy suit, gold chain at her throat, perfume named, reclaimed, at her pulse points. When she walked into the room, every person at the table stood. Not because they were told to, because they felt it. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was decisive. Nadine didn't ask for everything. She asked for what was hers: full custody of the twins, financial independence, the freedom to exist without permission. Victor, for the first time, had no leverage. The woman he'd dismissed had outmaneuvered him, not with anger, but with architecture. She'd built her exit while he was busy curating his image. By the time he realized what had happened, she was already gone. They moved into a brownstone on the south side, warm, lived in, full of art, laughter, music, and braiding sessions on the living room floor. The twins had their own rooms, Zuri's covered in drawings, Amara's organized with quiet precision. Nadine had an office with a wide desk, a view of the garden, and a framed photo on the wall. Not her wedding picture, but a shot from the gala. Her, in gold, mid-stride, looking straight into the camera with eyes that said everything words couldn't. The wedding photo didn't exist in this house. Only forward-facing windows. 6 months later, on a Tuesday evening, Nadine stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her brownstone. She was getting ready for a foundation event. Nothing as grand as the gala, just a community fundraiser on the west side. She wore a cream blouse and dark trousers. Simple, elegant. Her locks had grown slightly, the honey tips now framing her jaw with soft warmth. Her lips, her signature burgundy, were the last thing she applied. As she capped the lipstick, she noticed movement in the mirror behind her. Zuri and Amara stood in the doorway, watching. Zuri spoke first. "Mama, can we watch you get ready?" Nadine smiled. "You already are." The girls crept closer. Amara touched the gold chain necklace resting on the vanity. Zuri studied the perfume bottle, reclaimed, etched into glass. "Why is it called that?" Zuri asked. Nadine crouched so she was eye level with both of them. Because it reminds me that everything I am, everything beautiful about me, was always mine. I just had to remember to take it back. Amara tilted her head. Will we ever have to take ourselves back? The question hit Nadine in the chest, not with pain, but with purpose. She pulled both girls close. Maybe, she whispered. But if that day ever comes, you'll remember something. What? That your mother did it first. And she never looked back. She kissed their foreheads, stood, straightened her blouse, and turned to the mirror one last time. The woman staring back didn't flinch, didn't shrink, didn't ask for permission or approval or applause. She simply stood, whole, luminous, and unshakable, in the glow of everything she had always been. And the mirror, for the first time, had nothing left to reveal, because everything was already on the surface. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire story, family. If it moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone else's, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me what part touched you the most. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join our Twilight Love Tales family so we can keep sharing stories that heal, inspire, and remind us who we really are. Remember this, you are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not too dark, too soft, too scarred, too changed. You are the only version of you this world will ever get. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Until next time, keep shining, keep rising, and never let anyone dim your light. I love you all.